We are really so back in the Battlefield franchise. I can't honestly believe this. And as I was preparing to open the beta for the first time, and I saw the queue of over 140,000 people waiting to play it on PlayStation 5, I was like, okay, a lot of people are checking this game out, which means it's probably going to be pretty awesome. And you have to really go back to 2013's Battlefield 4, I think, to really understand the fundamentals of why this game is so amazing and important. But before I get into today's video review, if you guys like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me out a ton. And as you guys know, I've pivoted away from the smear campaign videos. We're getting back to gameplay, back to reviews, back to the stuff that matters. So if you like this kind of content, stick around because a lot more of it is coming. All right, so 2013's Battlefield 4, I think, was the gold standard in Battlefield until Battlefield 6. With all the great DLC that Battlefield 4 had and the balanced gameplay between the traditional classes, the Assault, the Engineer, the Support, and the Recon, with lots of upgrades, the idea of levolution, where as you played, the level slowly started to morph, whether the Siege of Shanghai and the tower was collapsing, or the level where the cruise ship or the battleship crashes into the island and you have to basically fight through a typhoon. Lots and lots of fun stuff in Battlefield 4. Unfortunately, after that, I think the franchise really lost its way. Just 2 years after that, we had Battlefield Hardline, which was the cops versus robbers game, which just really didn't feel like a Battlefield game. It released incredibly unpolished and broken. There was not a ton of DLC for that game. They very quickly pivoted away a year later, believe it or not, into Battlefield 1, which took the game back to a much more original World War I-esque root setting. I don't really think it was horrible, but it definitely didn't move the needle. Battlefield 5 was also very, very divisive in 2018. It seemed like more of the same, but unfortunately, a lot of the combat just felt very stale. The engine wasn't really up to par, and I think ultimately the progression system and the class system started to take a back seat there. They rebranded in 2021 with Battlefield 2042, and I think that was probably one of the worst entries in any of the games. They were chasing that Overwatch hero shooter. They kind of dropped the class system. It was this ultra-modern game where you could switch out loadouts and call in attack dogs and hovercraft on the fly. It did not feel good. That game really, really tanked. And really after that, I think a lot of people wondered what was next for the future of Battlefield. You know, by then, Call of Duty had really taken over a much stronger grasp of the space. Battlefield was not really a good battle royale. Battlefield was not a good deathmatch game, and definitely its trademark conquest mode absolutely fell very, very flat. So they took some time off, and I think that was the right thing to do. They did do some DLC and some, slight changes to Battlefield 2042, but the damage was done. You know, you can't build a good house on a bad foundation, and that project kind of started to fade away. Enter 2025 with Battlefield 6. Now, this is definitely a callback to Battlefield 4. As I said, it goes back to those traditional traditional classes that we had before. Each of them have strengths and weaknesses, but when played together in a squad, that's when you can really reign supreme, which I loved. Yes, there is an element of running and gunning for sure, and as you're watching some of my gameplay here, as I'm still trying to get the ropes as I play on my PlayStation 5 Pro, you really will see the most impact that I do to the battle, taking over control points, defending, pushing through very narrow firing gaps when I'm working with my squad, when I'm working in a team with other players. And that has always been the core of what Battlefield has been about, is not being an army of one, not being a lone wolf, but working together with your friends, using smart callouts, using those class abilities to push your way through the battlefield and to capture those points and to flank the enemy and to be successful. And some of my most fond gaming memories are those exact moments in Battlefield 4 with my buddies Kevin and Wes, where we would basically play together and slowly control the map with just one or two pieces of armor, all working together in unison with great comms and great callouts. It was tons and tons of fun. There's actually moments in more recent LAN parties, I'd say as late as like 2021, where we actually went back to Battlefield 4, as dated as it was, and still had a good time with it. So thankfully, I don't think we're going to have to do that anymore with the release of Battlefield 6, which launches very, very soon on Windows, PlayStation 5, and the Xbox Series. You're looking at the gameplay here from me on the PlayStation 5 Pro. It is running at about anywhere from, I'd say, 100 to 120 FPS. I did have my frame rate counter open on my TV. Obviously, PlayStation doesn't capture that. I'm sure Digital Foundry or somebody who's got much better tech and much better time will give you a much more accurate frame rate later. But this game ran very, very well. There are multiple modes where if you want to do a little bit more quality, or you want to drop the performance to kind of find that midpoint, or if you want to go full 120 like what I'm playing here, there are options for you. I don't know how it works on the standard PlayStation 5, but on the Pro, this game was amazing. I saw very, very limited pop-in, lots of great shadow and texture effects, lots of explosions, the sound, everything. We'll get into all of the review part in a moment, but I just want to say that overall it was a very, very smooth experience for me. Now, what makes this so good and what makes this such a call out to those Battlefield 4 days is largely the class system is back and it matters. A medic is one of the most important classes in the game. It allows you to put down these healing packs that allow you to heal your squad mates, and you can heal basically anybody around you. You have the ability to resuscitate downed players to kind of help them get back into the fight. It's awesome. But the medic has a massive weakness. They can't generate ammo. Well, the assault can. So now you have a medic and assault, now you have your ammo, now you have your health. Now you're starting to build a team. But what are you missing? Well, you're missing the ability to take down that heavy armor, those big tanks, the fully loaded vehicles that are driving through, blowing everybody up, the airplanes flying overhead. Well, throw an engineer in there. An engineer now has the ability to equip heavy armor, rocket launchers, even the ability to repair armor as well. And then even recon. Recon is phenomenal to push up to the front line, to create spawn points for your teammates to jump on you much quicker. For your, it also has the ability to lay out C4 to do close quarter detonation, more of kind of like almost a stealth class at times when it needs to be. And when you put all four of those together, boy, oh boy, do you have yourself an elite fighting unit, especially if everybody is working and kind of helping out the team. And I love that about this game, that everybody has a complement to each other, and working together, you basically can take out anything. And I love that this game gets away from that just incessant run and gun that we saw a lot in Call of Duty, where the time to kill was incredibly short and you're running around and sliding and 360 no scopes and all that stuff. Really burned me out. I think the other thing that burned me out on Call of Duty was it got away from the realism. We started to see a lot of really goofy character skins like Beavis and Butthead and the Ninja Turtles and some other goofy stuff. It really took away from the realism. And I think that Battlefield has always been grounded in realism. It's gritty, there's a lot of cussing, there's a lot of violence, the destruction, the rubble. It feels like you are in the war. It feels like you are part of something bigger than yourself. And in a lot of ways you are, and depending again on how you play, especially with that class system, you absolutely are part of something bigger than yourself. And you can basically create a lethal squad that does significant damage, and it does really reward you for that kind of gameplay. So that's why, to me, this is back to form. Gone are the goofy class systems and the hero, not the class systems, the hero powers and the hero system and the goofy trinkets that each hero had. And returning is the more standard class system and the kit system, where you could, pick a loadout that makes sense for you and your squad and work together and call out, more clear objectives in the map. And I really do like that. So I'm sold on this. I know there's probably some performance issues with some of the stuttering, and some of the ragdoll physics are a little goofy, and the game did crash on me a few times, even on my PlayStation. It unfortunately, I just basically froze up and I had to completely reboot my console. And then there were a couple soft locks where the console wasn't shut down, but the game unfortunately was. That's a beta. I think this kind of stuff's going to happen. I expect, as with most games, it will get better with time. I blame a lot of it on the fact that the servers are absolutely smoked right now. There's just so many people playing right now, which is great. And I think this surge is only going to increase. And I'm hoping videos like the one that I'm doing and the spread of this positivity for other people to say, hey, you know what? If you haven't played a war game, maybe jump back in. I think all of that is starting to come back into full swing, which is awesome. So I expect those numbers to go up even higher. And I think there's probably a lot of people who are just going to wait. You know, maybe they just dabble in the beta and then move out and play again later, and that's cool too. But yeah, other than some minor hiccups, it ran very well. I was so totally immersed in it. So with my particular setup, using a PlayStation 5 Pro, using an OLED TV with HDR, 120 FPS, so I was enjoying that higher frame rate. Still had a beautiful HDR. It looked really, really good in some of these different cityscapes. You're not seeing it here on Twitch, unfortunately, but some of the shadow effects, the way the lighting hit in some of the areas created these natural tunnels and natural choke points and shadows where enemies could kind of hide. And even when I was playing, using these areas as cover fire was awesome. It made me feel much more stealthy at times, and it made it feel much more real, especially when you had those very bright explosions and those very bright effects that kind of, the flares and the rocket launchers and the grenades really kind of took you out of the experience. Even like that flashbang effect, it really felt very, very raw and visceral. It looks so good on the TV. And obviously with the higher frame rate, it's going to be immersive. It's going to be fun to play. It's going to work great and look great and have a blast doing it. So I love that about this game. I thought they really nailed that aesthetic. And then, of course, there are other frame rate modes. So if you want a little bit higher fidelity at the cost of some frames, you'll tighten up and you'll get a little bit better smoke effects and some, I think, very minor ray tracing, a little bit more fidelity and stuff. But I think in a game like this, frame rate is key. You want it to be smooth and kind of a seamless experience as you run through the battlefield and as you kind of clear out enemies. You want it to feel not choppy. And the entire experience I had felt really, really good in that regard. So I was happy with that. The thing that has always made Battlefield games exceptional, though, has been the world-class sound design. Dating back to when EA did that really goofy thing in Titanfall 2, where they had those like 50 gigabyte OGG Vorbis lossless files you could download. They haven't gotten that silly with Battlefield 6, but the sound in this game is insane. And one of the things that they have always prided themselves on, I haven't seen them explicitly call it out. Maybe they have. I gotta admit, I haven't followed all the developer blogs in this because honestly, I thought this was just going to be another sleeper Battlefield game that wasn't going to be good. But one of the things that Battlefield used to do in the past was all of the sound effects that you heard were generated in-game. So Call of Duty will often inject ancillary background noise, machine gun fire, bombs, call-outs, airplanes flying overhead, to kind of puff up the battle. This game doesn't do that. Everything you hear, I believe, is in-game. And you can tell, it almost feels like a freight train. If you've ever been out in the forest and you hear like wind coming like very far away and it gets louder and louder and louder, and then it kind of sweeps through you and it's this, this cacophony of just like sounds, and it's like, oh my God, and then it just kind of fades away. That's how this is. So if you want to spawn back at your headquarters, it's quiet. You want to kind of walk through some of the areas that have already been captured. It's quiet, it's peaceful, and then you start to hear the light gun fire, and then by the time you get into the front lines, it's full explosions, and part of the buildings are collapsing, and tanks are going off, and you hear other players calling for ammo and medic, first aid, and you hear the enemy screaming at you, and it's very raw and violent and visceral. And then you go back to, the loading screen, and it's just quiet again. And I love that dichotomy of the kind of peaceful versus the aggressive sound effects. And I think they've done a phenomenal job of that. And I think the sound design is world class. This is absolutely a showcase game, I think, in sound design. I haven't had a chance much yet to read into or play with the PlayStation Tempest 3D audio engine. I suspect it's probably pretty darn good. I'm currently using my Shithell 2 DAC and my Sennheiser HD 660s, the S2s, and they sound phenomenal. They really, really sing. It's beautiful, it's loud, it's vibrant. I can't wait to play more of this game with my friends and you know, be able to get the good comms as well. Right now this is just solo, but I think using some of those great sound effects is really going to help me pinpoint where enemies are and feel much more immersive in combat. And that's why, to me, this is a slam dunk on PlayStation 5 Pro, and it's an absolute must get. In terms of controls and handling and movement, everything felt great. It's very simple to mount to things. Like, I like to use the big heavy chain gun or a shotgun. Those are kind of my two go-to guns. Getting a big heavy chain gun, being able to mount was very, very simple. It felt very smooth. The controls felt great, being able to turn closely, quickly, switch between my gadgets, whether it be my defibrillator paddles or my first aid or my pistol, or if I was playing a different class like my C4 or some of the other trinkets that I had with me in the game. Those gadgets, they all felt great. There's a ton of weapon customization, which I really didn't get into. I don't think progress is going to save over, so I'm not that worried about it. But I could just look. I was looking through the system and how the attachments work, and being able to customize that perfect gun for you, whether you want to have a silencer, you want to use like a duck bill on a shotgun, or have more ammunition. There's all those kinds of trade-offs that you can have, and there's weapon skins and that sort of thing. It all looks and feels great. Very, very excited for that. I did try to play on my PC, and I was very frustrated. It didn't just work. There's a lot of security stuff that they have embedded into the PC version that requires you to go into your BIOS and to change out some of your settings. And honestly, I didn't really feel comfortable doing that. Not to say that the settings that were changed maybe didn't matter. I don't know. I'm not really a computer guy anymore in that respect. But I didn't like that. That turned me off. I know that there's supposed to be some element of, like, I know back then in Counter-Strike it was Punk Buster, but like, I know there's supposed to be some sort of level of additional security here by turning on some of these settings, which is supposed to give you a more realistic experience. But it seems like a lot of work and a lot of modification for just one game, which is why I didn't even try it on PC. Unfortunately, I have it installed. I was going to try it out with my ultra-wide and see if it was maybe a little bit more immersive experience using a keyboard and a mouse. But honestly, the fact that it just worked on my PlayStation, the fact that I have the OLED monitor, the 120 FPS, the nice sound, headset and everything, I think I'm probably just going to stick to PlayStation 5 Pro for this title. I know it's crossplay, so it's not a huge deal, and playing with my friends might be a little bit of a nuance because they're all TeamSpeak guys, and there's no native app for TeamSpeak. Maybe I can convert them to Discord, and then it won't matter anymore because that's obviously baked into the PlayStation 5 experience. But overall, I think this was a great game minus that PC element, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves. I'm looking forward to seeing if there's any actual feedback loop in this open beta. A lot of times games will release an open beta and they'll say, hey, we're looking for feedback, but they're not. It's just a glorified stress test. And I mean, the fact that there were so many people online waiting to play, and the fact that I got on, and other than some minor hiccups, I had a relatively smooth experience. I would say that their network and their infrastructure was actually very, very good. I can't imagine playing this on launch day. I feel like this game would just absolutely destroy the servers, considering that on a beta weekend, a Saturday at like 5 o'clock, I had about a 15-minute queue time where I had to wait to get into a match. And then, you know, there was, what, 140, 150,000 people in front of me. That's pretty crazy. And that's just on PC, I assume. I'm sorry, on PlayStation 5, I assume, but I could be wrong. I don't know. But overall, this was an absolute return to form. These guys absolutely crushed this game. The aesthetics, the feel, everything. It brought me back to what I wanted. And I wanted this game to be just Battlefield 4, but better. And it is. It is everything I could have hoped for. The map design, the gameplay, the moment-to-moment feels, the sound, everything. It felt so real and authentic and fun. And I just want to get back in and play more. And I'll probably play a little bit more tonight with the squad and just, you know, enjoy it. But this is definitely not a game to sleep on. If you're burnt out like me on Call of Duty and you want to get back into a game, check this one out. I think you're going to appreciate it. I'll have a lot more content on this game and gameplay when it comes out. This is a day one purchase for me, absolutely. And Battlefield's back, baby. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave some comments below. Let me know your thoughts on the Battlefield 6 experience. And take care of yourselves. Until next time, I will see you guys on the other side. Bye-bye.